Welcome back to Global People Inc. I have with me here Jamal Ali, author, poet. He's got a new book called Heartfire Rendezvous coming out in just a couple of weeks, actually, right around Thanksgiving. And what he's going to do is read a little bit about the book, I don't know what book this comes from, which piece of the trilogy it comes from, but I want to share this with the viewers. So
Okay.
you have the floor.
This is actually from the second book, which is called The Crossing, and this is from the beginning of part 5.
Okay.
On the Great Flat, all directions looked like infinity. Just 2 days out, and some faces began shifting in revelation, the realization they were riding horseback across Africa. Eyes whispered disbelief, muttered questions puddled in exposure to relentless heat, reveille flesh lullabied by horses' sway and endless emptiness. Does anybody else see that? Ramesses asked. Those sunset clouds look outlined in bright red, even now after the sun is well down. In slow ripple, they slowed to focus. Yes, I see it, Elohim nodded, and there's something about that light. Yes, something, and it's not good, Chakisma added in a hollow whisper. I've seen red skies like that, Chanel murmured softly. Where? Senzafo asked. In my homeland, in western Cambodia, during much of the war. She shook her head sadly. Many temples, destroyed. Zamba grimaced, worry a millstone in his mind. It's been 3 days and no sight of sanctuary. Oganeri eased Sirius back along the line beside Elohim. Even muttering under his breath, Oganeri's voice seeped into the ground, their bones, gathering even Chakisma's attention. What is coming, he urged, what we must do. All must be prepared. Elohim. He nodded and they loped silently into the falling light. Soon the twins and Sadaka found a sight marginally less exposed than the rest. Twilight crept from one horizon, last solar tendrils slipped the other. The new camp rhythm syncopated, crossed. Stoves emerged swiftly. No one had seen a tree since they all came together. The prep and meal were pensive, subdued, focus turned within. Once the cooking shut down and eyes adjusted to starlight under a hazy waxing moon, even shadows became clear. The group clustered unconsciously, waiting. What is coming, Oganeri's voice reached from the darkness. What we are about to do will test you, test us all, rigorously. That is why we are here, Ramesses proclaimed. Oganeri nodded, eyes smiling as he approached. We are about to face great challenges, the challenge of self, flung in many guises, many deadly. Some of us remember, but not all of us know. Self, their power, what we have working with us. To engage what lies ahead, we all need to be. He paused, shaking his head. He glanced towards the big Maori and spoke his name softly. Elohim. Elohim rose slowly from his boulder and moved among them, dark eyes glistening. I love it when Elohim recounts a tale. He makes it seem so real, like you're there, Chakisma smiled, nodding at Senzafo. You mean these are just stories, she asked. Elohim turned his head in recognition, but did not look. It's not the story. It's always been about the myth. The story is a fragment, a remnant of legend. The legend just shadow, an echo of the myth. Myth captures truth in metaphor, renders it tangible to senses starved of memory. Myths are but the metaphor, a handle on truths minds could not engage, rude reflections of the life, lives lived in apparent fullness, we knew to be far less. There have been many ages of women and men, humans, mankind, and those who would be human, or at least make the claim. We have each been all peoples, some who have no history in this age of mankind, some with advanced technology, some who walk with dinosaurs, some who sailed the stars. This planet is far older than most these days have guessed, and all that is desolate was not always so. As much that is under sea was once dry land. We were Adjikebu, a sect of warrior priests from Sahara, beacon city along the southern sweep of the great Albion Sea. The continent was much different then. The Serengeti was lush, West Africa rich with forests, Kilimanjaro was too hot to have snow, yet Even then, the Nile was already ancient. Adjikebu dressed completely in black with only their hands, eyes, and feet exposed. Women and men both among us. Our people were from the deep interior of the continent, our skin a rich indigo, the darkest of black with iridescent blue highlights. Our sect had founded and mastered a spiritual science fusing martial arts, what is now called yoga, psychic abilities, and an energetic feng shui, which allowed us to shape and wield energy as a sculptor works clay. Exiled for failing to align with a corrupt king, cadres of us wandered the Great Flat, leading from sea to vast savanna. Some even ventured as far as the Atlantic, which is not what we called it then. Things were loose on the Great Flat, a series of trade routes and open territories ungoverned by any mighty nation state of the time. Cast into service by treachery against an ancestor, our families were enslaved, tools to our abuse by false faith and a noose of truth knotted with lies. One morning, a mute among us refused the royal order, rising in court to defy the king. His gestures were clear, outraging the king, who ordered his guards to seize the mute's wife. Seeing the blade against her throat, the mute's body became bathed in flame. He raised his arm, spoke, and the soldiers were reduced to dust. Walls collapsed, the palace was destroyed, and the great king was seen running from the carnage, wailing like a frightened child. People dashed screaming, scrambling for their lives, all except Adjikebu. As the last stones fell and gravel stopped sifting to the ground, we all walked from the swirling dust, clean, unbowed, led by our new voice. We retreated to our temple beside the great river and prepared to depart, knowing we would no longer be safe in the region. Before we could get underway, the temple was attacked from all sides using weapons of our construction. There were less than 1,000 of us, and though we knew we could defeat the king's armies, we couldn't do it without destroying everything for kilometers. We huddled in silence beneath the temple in a deep grotto, a sanctuary known only to us. The voice drew out 2 stones, luminous in the dimness, and walked to the center of the throng. "We must leave this place," he whispered, and even at a whisper, the walls and floor shook. Some of you remember. Grunts and grumbles, muttered assent punctuated the silence, eyes lost to absent, inward focus. Elohim's gaze crept their faces in slow, evocative scrutiny. Most eyes held, fired by volcanic memory. Science to one may be magic to another, and gifts without work is an unknown burden. Our training began within the womb. Our mothers anchored us, our fathers forged us. Generations of gift, work, and evolution produced renegade Adjikebu. We Adjikebu spawned legend and dream till truth was exaggerated, twisted into the fantastic familiar. To some, we were jinn. Yes, genies. Us, he grinned, tapping over his heart, shrunk to fit the bottles of their imaginations. Some called us demiurge, titans, gods, but we knew we were just becoming, had still forgotten far more than we knew. Shreds and threads of the divine we are, and once remembered, all is possible. The voice introduced a new form of travel, with stones of power and light. Sitting atop our stallions, fully provisioned, the animals fidgeted, then calmed as rhythms emerged. We were surrounded by wind, so fierce you couldn't see, but not even our sand scars rippled. Violet, static lightning rose in a cylinder around, and suddenly, everything stilled. It was yet early in the afternoon, but we were far out of sight of any city. Sadaka was there and recognized the oasis a short jog away. Sadaka's brewing smile leavened into a grin and broke into a laugh. "You're right, I do remember. It was one of those oases we had long used on treks toward the Albion." "The Albion?" "Yes," he nodded, "the Albion Sea, covering much of what is now the Sahara. I recognize the oasis because once, out riding to stop a war, we found it was a good 2 days' hard gallop from the temple of our home." Amazement flooded them. Eye contact water-sparked ignition. "Once we knew we could travel this way," Elohim continued, "no dream of a flying carpet could catch us." The voice was weakened, but he rode like the rest of us. We were now fugitives, too dangerous to leave alone, too powerful to kill by force. Elohim paused, slowly scanning the core of the group. Where there is no law, force and treachery dominate. But we walked strong in the open, and people soon discovered our code and cadre became cultural immune system. Tyranny diminished. Thieves and slavers soon left the area. Beholden to no king, at war with no nation, we became spine to cultures of the Albion Crescent. No one ever knew our numbers. Relied upon, revered, housed in the architecture of myth, soon no one knew what to believe or expect till we could safely travel alone in all but the worst grottos. We became vehicles of justice.
I was there. I actually painted a picture. This is what I mean. When you read this stuff, you're actually there. You're in the moment.